I survived the inheritance war, but my grandfather left a second safe behind the bookshelves, and the code felt like a threat. Hi, I'm Brendan. I'm 23, and I've been called a lot of things over the past year. Manipulator, liar, opportunist, but the one thing nobody expected me to become was the sole heir to $1 million estate and the whistleblower in a federal corruption case. I was still on the porch when my half-sister Sarah's fake smile faltered for the first time. She spotted the man beside me, tall, tailored suit, clean-shaven, and every bit as calm as a surgeon about to crack a chest open. "Good morning," he said smoothly, flashing his badge. "Agent William Thompson, FBI." If I could bottle the sound of Sarah's leather portfolio thudding against the porch as her hands went limp, I'd play it on repeat every time I needed a pick-me-up. Mom gasped like she'd swallowed a communion wafer sideways, and Marcus, my father, blinked 3 times and said, "This is a misunderstanding." "Not really," Agent Thompson replied, opening a manila folder so thick it looked like it was auditioning for the role of war crimes evidence. "We've been listening for months. Calls, meetings, fake documents, even a recording of you offering a federal judge 25 grand to expedite your daughter's fraud." Marcus's mouth opened, then closed, twice, like a bass pulled out of a lake. They hadn't come here to move me out. They'd come here to move in, to take over. But instead of unloading boxes, the movers leaned on their trucks, watching as 3 federal sedans pulled up and started unloading a very different kind of cargo: agents, cameras, and cuffs. "What is this?" Sarah snapped, her voice way too high for someone claiming innocence. "You said you were unstable." "You forged psych records, Sarah," I said flatly, "and paid my roommate to lie. Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" She blinked, hard. Her mouth moved again, no sound coming out. "You tried to sell Walter's house, my house, to a corrupt development company for less than it's worth. You were going to demolish everything he built because you couldn't pay back a couple of goons you borrowed money from." Agent Thompson stepped forward, hands behind him like a man about to teach a very final lesson. "You want to talk about mental instability?" he said, "because I've seen more stability in a house of cards built on a subway platform." That's when Marcus made a run for it. He made it halfway down the porch steps before 2 agents tackled him on the walkway. Linda shrieked, Sarah crumpled, and I finally exhaled. The manila folder in my hands wasn't just for show. It held copies of everything Walter had given me: notarized trust documents, tapes, affidavits, photographs, timestamps, metadata, and a posthumous letter that ended with, "Brendan, now they will see who you've become." I looked out at the neighborhood. Mrs. Green was peeking out through her curtains across the street, her little poodle pressed against the glass beside her. I gave a small wave. Walter had spent his life protecting this place. Now it was my turn. Sarah was the first to start crying, not the soft, embarrassed kind, but the loud, sputtering gasps of someone watching their entire reality disintegrate. "Brendan," she said, voice cracking as she stumbled back onto the porch swing, "we're family. You didn't have to do this." Agent Thompson didn't even blink. "Your family tried to commit federal fraud, Miss Mitchell. Brendan didn't do this. You did." He turned toward the agents, now zip-tying my father's wrists down on the lawn. "Get him up." Marcus groaned, his navy suit streaked with grass stains, trying to keep what was left of his dignity as they dragged him to his feet. "This is entrapment. I want a lawyer." "You will have several. I suggest the honest ones." Linda hadn't moved. She stood there like a statue, her pearls practically strangling her. She kept glancing at the neighbors watching from across the street as if reputation points were still up for grabs. I finally spoke, slowly, calmly, the way Walter taught me to talk when I was furious. "You wanted to erase him, everything he built, all because you thought I'd be too weak to stop you." Sarah shook her head, tears streaking her foundation. "You don't understand what we've been through, Brendan. Dad,
Marcus, he was drowning in debt. Meridian offered us a way out." "And you sold your soul for it," I said. "No," Linda whispered, her voice hollow. "We sold his memory for it." Silence dropped like a bomb between us. Behind me, Agent Thompson pulled out a small voice recorder. He didn't play it this time. He just set it on the porch table between us. "Everything's documented," he said, turning to me. "Every forged affidavit, every phone call, every meeting at that diner on 6th Street. You did good, Brendan." I didn't feel good. I felt tired. Walter's journals hadn't prepared me for the moment when your entire family is exposed as criminals on your own front porch. "They're still my blood," I muttered, almost to myself. Agent Thompson gave me a sideways look. "Blood doesn't make you family, son. Loyalty does." And then came the sound that would haunt me for years. A second moving truck engine shutting off. For a moment, I thought maybe it was just another crew member arriving late. But no, the passenger door creaked open, and out stepped Judge Crawford, like he owned the street. Judge Robert Crawford strolled toward the porch like this was just another photo op, chin high, hands behind his back, completely ignoring the fact that a federal agent stood 10 feet away holding a warrant with his name on it. Agent Thompson didn't move. He just smiled, the kind of smile sharks probably give right before they bite. "Judge Crawford," he said, flipping open his folder, "you're about 5 minutes early to your own arrest." Crawford blinked. Once, slowly, then glanced at Marcus, still cuffed on the grass. "This is ridiculous. I'm a sitting judge. This entire scene violates the 4th and 5th—" "You're done talking," Agent Thompson cut in. "You see that recorder on the table? We've got your voice on tape. Multiple calls. One involving a very creative $25,000 campaign donation from Marcus Mitchell in exchange for an expedited ruling." Crawford looked right at me, and for the first time, I saw it. Fear. Not a lot, just a crack in the mask, but it was there. "You have no idea what you've started, son," he said, low and steady. "Funny. That's exactly what Walter wrote in his final journal entry." Agent Thompson stepped aside as 2 agents moved in. "Robert Crawford, you are under arrest for bribery, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy to defraud the United States." Crawford's hands didn't shake. Not at first, but as they read him his rights, I saw his fingers twitch, like he still couldn't believe this wasn't going his way. Behind him, one of the movers, confused and wide-eyed, muttered to another, "Dude, did we just show up to a sting operation?" Meanwhile, Sarah had slumped fully into the porch swing, mascara streaked down her face, watching the dream she'd built on lies collapse into splinters. Linda, pale and rigid, kept whispering, "This isn't happening. This isn't happening." But it was, because Walter had planned for everything. I reached into the manila folder and pulled out a single photograph, the last one Walter ever took. Him and me, sitting in front of the fireplace, hands clasped, both smiling like we already knew how this was going to end. I held it up for them to see. He knew about all of you, about Meridian, about Crawford. He just wanted me to see it with my own eyes before I inherited the war. And that's when Sarah broke. "I was desperate, okay? You think I wanted this? You think I enjoyed lying, bribing, forging things? I've got 2 kids and no money. I was drowning." "You weren't drowning. You were building a raft out of me." That shut her up. Agent Thompson gestured to the unmarked cars.
"Let's wrap it up." As the cuffs clicked around Crawford's wrists and my family watched their empire of fraud implode, I finally understood what Walter meant when he wrote, "The test isn't whether you can hold on, it's whether you know when to let go." And I had let go of them, of the lies, of ever being the person they thought they could manipulate, so I could do what came next. The porch emptied slowly, like the aftermath of a storm that had taken its time destroying everything. One by one, the agents loaded the arrested into unmarked cars. Marcus silent, Linda shell-shocked, Sarah refusing to meet my eyes. and Judge Crawford mumbling legal jargon that wasn't going to save him. The moving trucks backed away without unloading a single box, and suddenly I was alone again on the wraparound porch. Just me and Agent Thompson. He didn't say anything for a moment, just stood there beside me, watching the neighborhood go still again, like someone had hit pause on the chaos. "You handled that better than most adults I've worked with," he said finally. "Yeah, well, I've had a hell of a crash course in betrayal." Agent Thompson turned to me. "You did more than expose corruption, Brendan. You helped shut down a property development racket that's been eating through neighborhoods like cancer. Your grandfather didn't just trust you with a house, he trusted you with a mission." "I know," I said, and looked out across Maple Street. Mrs. Green still stood behind her curtain, her eyes wide, probably still trying to wrap her mind around the fact that the Mitchells were no longer the good family at the end of the block. She waved. I nodded. "Meridian's finished. Federal seizure orders are being processed. Their execs are looking at serious time." "Good," I said, and I meant it. Walter deserves that much. Thompson handed me a sealed envelope. "One last thing. Your grandfather left this with us, told me to give it to you after the reckoning," his words. I opened it carefully, half expecting it to explode into more revelations. Inside was a letter, handwritten, Walter's shaky cursive, still clear and sharp. "Brendan, if you're reading this, then the rot has been cut out, and you've proven yourself the man I believed you could be. I never wanted you to inherit a fortune. I wanted you to inherit conviction. This house is protected now, but what matters is what you do with it. Let it become more than a symbol. Let it become a bulwark against the kind of evil we just fought back. Use the trust to protect others, not just yourself. And when the time comes, forgive, if they've earned it. P.S. There's a second safe. Look behind the bookshelves in the study. You'll know the code. Love always, Walter." My hands trembled a little as I folded the letter. "Second safe?" I said aloud, eyebrows raised. Thompson smirked. He really didn't trust lawyers, huh? I don't blame him. The agent clapped me once on the shoulder. "My job's done here, but yours, it's just getting started." He descended the porch stairs and disappeared into the calm. I stepped back into the house, shut the door behind me, and turned toward Walter's study. There was a new war chest waiting, and I was ready to open it. Walter's study still smelled of lemon oil and old paper, like time itself had sunk into the walls. I locked the front door behind me, crossed the creaky hardwood, and ran my fingers along the spines of his neatly arranged books. Atlas of Structural Engineering, Federal Tax Code 1973 edition, Corruption in Mid-Century Urban Development. The man didn't read for fun, he read to win. I crouched behind the shelves on the far wall, the ones that didn't line up perfectly with the baseboard, something I'd noticed years ago but never questioned. I ran my hand along the side panel, felt for a latch, and then, click, a quiet release. The entire bookshelf shifted an inch forward. Walter, always dramatic. I heaved the shelf open on hidden hinges, revealing a second wall safe embedded behind it, older and rustier than the first. The keypad looked analog, no biometrics, just numbers, no labels. But I knew the code, of course I did. The year Walter enlisted. I typed it in, held my breath, and turned the handle. It opened with a groan like something out of a movie. Inside, a single black binder, a smaller envelope marked "To be opened alone," and, tucked into the corner, a dusty old camcorder. The binder was labeled Operation Backbone. My heart kicked. I opened it to the first page. It was Walter's handwriting again, block letters this time, like he wanted to make sure nobody misunderstood a single word. Objective: expose long-term systemic real estate fraud in Northridge County. Document all corrupt officials, complicit developers, and financial enablers. Timeline: 2011 to present. Final phase, Brendan. The next 100 pages were part dossier, part war journal. Meeting transcripts, a map of the neighborhood with red pins for every home Meridian had targeted, names of homeowners, notes on their accidental fires, unexplained home inspections, surprise zoning reclassifications. Some of them were still in the neighborhood, others were gone, moved, or worse. One entry had "confirmed suicide" written in bold red ink, a homeowner who'd refused to sell. 2 weeks later, he was found dead with a typed note that Walter suspected had been forged. I stopped reading for a moment and just sat on the floor, the binder on my knees, my jaw tight. This wasn't just corruption. This was a slow-motion massacre. And nobody else had cared, except him, except me. I opened the smaller envelope. Inside, a single-page letter. Brendan, they'll try again. Different names, different companies. Greed always grows back unless someone keeps pulling it out by the roots. That someone is you now. There's a camera in this envelope. Use it to record your own evidence. Don't just fight back. Document it. Build a wall of truth so tall no one can lie their way over it. Your fight has just begun. W. I looked at the camera. It was heavy, analog, probably from the early 2000s. It smelled like the attic. But I knew exactly what he wanted me to do with it. Not just preserve the truth, broadcast it. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed in Walter's study, binder open across the desk, flipping pages like each one might burst into flames if I looked away too long. Operation Backbone wasn't just a list of crimes. It was a blueprint for systemic exposure. Names, dates, photos, offshore accounts, even email printouts. And one page stopped me cold. Project Gables, Phase 2. According to Walter's notes, Meridian had already begun quietly purchasing land 2 towns over. Not just one neighborhood, 3. Whole city blocks marked for redevelopment, including 2 schools and a community center that served low-income families, the kind of place that doesn't have the money or political muscle to fight back. I stared at the document. Meridian wasn't just greedy, they were expanding. I had to move, now. The next morning, I drove 2 hours south to the town of Fairview, where Phase 2 was supposed to begin. Walter had marked a small real estate office as Primary Front, Fisher and Rourke Real Estate. Looked innocent enough from the street. A cute blue cottage-style office with a "Now Hiring" banner and a Labrador sunbathing on the porch. I parked across the street and started filming. The camcorder whirred to life with a satisfying hum. I caught video of the entrance, the license plates in the parking lot, even one suited man leaving in a hurry, talking on his phone about pushing the price down before appraisal. I followed him discreetly. He led me to a new housing development on the edge of town, still under construction, except there was no signage, no builders' logos, no marketing materials, just raw lumber, tarps, and trucks with covered plates. Something shady was brewing here. Walter was right. I spent the next week documenting everything. I used burner phones to schedule meetings with Fisher and Rourke under a fake name, pretending to be an investor interested in quick turnover properties. They were too eager, too slick. One of them let it slip that several older properties were in the pipeline, just waiting to clear probate. Probate, the same system they'd tried to weaponize against me. They were running the same scam again. Only this time, I had Walter's evidence, my own footage, and a growing contact list of people he'd once helped. I reached out to Daniel Foster, the attorney who'd created the trust. He was surprised to hear from me. "You found the second safe," he said after I explained. "I was wondering how long it would take." "Walter knew they'd keep going," I said. "This isn't over." "No," said Daniel, "but now you're the one writing the rules." He connected me with a non-profit media outlet specializing in public corruption. They jumped at the footage. Within 48 hours, I was sitting in a downtown studio, the camcorder beside me, binder in hand, telling the full story on camera under the title The Grandson's War. When the piece aired the following week, it exploded. News stations picked it up, Walter's research got cited by lawmakers, Phase 2 in Fairview was frozen overnight pending federal review, and suddenly I wasn't just the kid who inherited a house. I was the heir to a fight that wasn't finished. The media storm was instant and ferocious. Within 72 hours of the Grandsons' War airing, Fisher and Rourke shut down their office, wiping their website and social channels clean. But it was too late. My footage had already gone viral. Zoning maps, secret land buys, whispered threats to elderly homeowners caught on tape. The real shockwave, though, came from the community. I started getting emails, dozens, then hundreds. Widows in Fairview who'd been pressured into quick sales, families told their homes were unsafe unless they sold within 30 days, even a retired teacher who'd been threatened with a fake tax lien by someone posing as a city assessor. Every story was another echo of what Walter had warned me about. I partnered with the same nonprofit that ran the first exposé. We created a hotline, built a database, and launched what we called the Backbone Project, a legal defense and documentation fund for victims of real estate fraud and predatory zoning. And then, the biggest surprise of all showed up on my front porch. Linda. No pearls, no fake smiles, just a thrift store coat, red eyes, and something I hadn't seen in her face in years: humility. "She's been volunteering," she said softly, clutching a file folder to her chest. "At the foundation. I thought it was just busy work, but then I started reading the letters." "What letters?" She handed me the folder. Inside were handwritten notes from seniors all over the county, thanking the foundation for helping them keep their homes. One read simply, "My husband built this porch. Now I get to die on it. Thank you." Linda swallowed hard. "I was wrong, Brendan, about everything. Walter saw what mattered, and you fought for it. I want to help now, not for forgiveness, for purpose." I didn't answer right away, but I didn't close the door either. Maybe Walter had been right about that too. Maybe justice was the beginning, but mercy was the legacy. 1 year later, I stood in the front yard of Walter's house, my house, watching as a group of high school students planted a tree, a young oak, the first of 20, part of a community renewal project funded by the foundation, a project we called Walter's Roots. It was Marcus who came up with the name. Yeah, Marcus. He'd been out of prison for 6 months, sober for 5. He worked full-time now with a non-profit construction crew that retrofits homes for disabled veterans. He didn't speak much anymore, but when he did, it was honest. Sarah came next, pushing a wheelbarrow filled with mulch. Her clothes were stained, her hands blistered. Her court-mandated community service hours already surpassed by 200 and counting. She hadn't seen her kids yet, but she sent them postcards every week, real ones, handwritten. They'd started writing back. Linda handled the check-in table, offering lemonade and registration forms for free home inspections. She didn't need a script anymore. She believed in it now. Agent Thompson arrived just after noon. No badge this time, just jeans, a flannel, and a grin. "Never thought I'd see this street like this," he said, nodding at the volunteers. "Not after what they tried to do to it." I handed him a fresh squeezed lemonade. Neither did I. The foundation had grown beyond anything Walter could have imagined. Over a dozen full-time staff, partnerships with elder law attorneys, pro bono home appraisers, even whistleblower support for public corruption cases. But the biggest change? Us. My family wasn't healed, not completely, maybe never completely, but we were honest. We were working, and for the first time in a long time, we were together. Later that afternoon, I opened the floor during our neighborhood assembly in Walter's old living room. Representatives from every block sat on mismatched chairs and folding stools. I pulled out a small wooden box from under the table. "I found this in the attic last month," I said, holding it up. "It's a time capsule Walter buried up there in '98. Inside was a photo, a newspaper clipping, and a quote he'd scribbled on the back of a grocery receipt." I unfolded the yellowed scrap of paper and read it aloud. "You don't build legacy in concrete. You build it in people." The room was quiet, and for the first time since Walter's death, I didn't feel like I was carrying his burden. I felt like I was continuing his work, not as a warrior, not as a victim, but as a builder, just like he was.